his camping experience as a first-time camper in 1963, and he continued for 6 years. In his first year, he only attended for 2 weeks. It was so bad in his first year that John cried 24/7. But I guess it didn't matter, because in his final 5 years, John attended camp for all 7 weeks each year. You could either call that a comeback, or his parents really wanted to take a break away from him. After a couple years off, while attending school, he became a counselor in 1971 and continued on for a total of 3 years, culminating in 1973 when he was head counselor. Starting in 1977, John served a 3-year term on the Camp Haiastan board. A lifelong member of the AYF, John was always dedicated to Armenian organizations and events, including an involvement in his community in Providence, where he has served on the last 3 AYF Olympic steering committees, most recently last year. John uses his heavy friendships in the Providence Community Men's Club to recruit volunteers to come to camp for weekend cleanup sessions, multiple times a year for various projects. The projects include painting, maintenance of the grounds, removal of forestry, sometimes tearing down old, beaten down, unused cabins. The majority of these projects involve hard work and labor. John has also kept the empty Camp Haiastan lot across the street very well maintained. He's also led his team with many projects inside Samur Hall, including working on the floor as well as the kitchen. Post-retirement, John has been spending his free time at camp throughout the year, working on many projects and improvements on the campgrounds. He works closely with our camp caretaker to prioritize projects and get his hands and feet nice and wet working on them. Whether it's with a paintbrush, a hammer, or just his creative mind, there's nothing that's going to stop John from fixing anything that's broken at camp. As recently as May, John got the sand pit ready for the first Camp Haiastan day camp that we've had in 3 years. John has always been good with tools and handiwork and building things. Here's a story about Camp Haiastan that stretches over 50 years. In 2019, John was visiting cousins in Armenia. Harmless, right? Well, he met a fellow diasporan Armenian who'd been working with the Fuller Global Builders Organization, helping build homes in Armenia. It turns out that this individual was someone who went to camp with John 50 years before. Typical of John, he returned 2 years later, post-COVID, to help build a house in Armenia with the same organization. And he returned again this year to help build 2 houses in the span of a couple weeks. He's planning on returning again next year, this time leading the team that he's going with. This is where I insert the shameless plug, by the way. If anybody has any interest in joining him, please reach out to him directly afterwards and inquire about doing so. So you see how a vacation in Armenia turned into multiple visits of helping build homes in your motherland, all from seeing an old Camp Haiastan friend from 50 years ago. Admittedly though, even though he attended camp for 6 years and almost 40 total weeks and sat in hours and hours of Armenian school and hours of swimming lessons, John can't speak Armenian or swim. But that doesn't stop him from spending hundreds of hours helping beautify Camp Haiastan that you see each year. Please help me in welcoming John Mangasayan to the stage.
struggle today having to say thank you. So the first thing I did when I was practicing upstairs, I asked Deadhide to say a prayer for me. And he said, forget it, they asked me to talk to, who's going to pray for me? But I want to thank the board, on the Haiastan, especially for that introduction. But special thanks to Gala for letting me go to camp, not as a camper anymore, but to continue to help, which I do a couple of times a week. I could live forever and never repay camp for what they've done for me. They've given me lifelong friends, countless memories, precious life's lessons, and if that wasn't enough, they gave me a wife. Julie's been by my side for 50 years since we were campus counselors together. No easy task. Haiastan asked me to cut it short, but I do want to share with you. But I do want to share one of those life's lessons. In the 70s, I was on the board of directors, and I was I was the chairman of the board. But times were different then. We didn't have any money. We didn't have the alumni base that we have now. The wonderful people in this room. Being on the board meant you got to do all the work. Things were different, but some things were the same. You would have to prepare the camp for the upcoming summer. You'd go down and evaluate how things were, make your list, have a plan, and make sure you got ready for camp. Some things were the same. There was winter damage, and there's winter damage every year. But some things were different. There was vandalism, there was theft, there was things were broken, and every time you went down there, you held your breath that it wouldn't be too bad. One Saturday, I went to camp to do that evaluation, to make a plan for the upcoming summer. And I was to be alone, and it was just to do that evaluation. And when I went there was a car already there. It was early in the morning, and it was my Uncle Haiastan and his son Chris. They were there fixing all the broken windows. Here's a guy who had a business, who had a family, who had responsibilities in the Indian Orchard community, but he found the time to go to camp to help. There was no fanfare, there was no invitation, there was no thank you, there was no thank you necessary. He knew what work needed to be done. He knew how important camp is to our diaspora. He knew how important camp is for our heritage and our culture to continue. And he just did the work. Camp blesses you with those life lessons. You don't get them many places. There's not many places to get those. Camp gives you those. And if you pay attention and you have your eyes open, it weaves itself into the thread of who you are. I want to thank you for this plaque, and we'll put it up in a prominent place in our home, Julie and I, and I'll smile when I look at it, just like I'm smiling now, but I know it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to our grandparents who had the vision, it belongs to our parents who brought us to camp every summer, some of us kicking and screaming, and like Mike Shamlian said to me the other day, when his kids didn't want to go to camp, They're gonna go until they like it. This plaque also belongs to everyone who supports the camp financially, but most importantly, it belongs to everyone who dedicates their precious time. It will be an honor to watch over this plaque for you. Thank you very much.